Jump! Okay, so we haven't finished any of our other projects, but we figured it'd be a good time to start a new one. We're not really that smart, but whatever. So we got a 2019 Corvette here. It's a Grand Sport. Supposedly it makes 450 or 60 horsepower, and that's not enough. So we're gonna go ahead and put a Magnuson Supercharger on. Let's get started. Jump! So when you order the 2650 kit from Magnuson, it's going to show up in these two boxes. Why don't we go ahead, throw it all on the bench, and we'll go through everything that's involved. All right, so we got everything out of the boxes. Let's go ahead and go over piece by piece what you get in the kit. First, you have the throttle body adapter here, a couple pulleys, one for the blower, one for the crank. You have your air inlet tube, RTD, this is what you're gonna use to flash the computer. Here's your heat exchanger. You have an upper and a lower, the lower still in the box. Come to the supercharger. Now this is a larger supercharger than we put on my 06. That was a 2300 if you remember. This is a 2650. So it's much larger, but in order to fit this big blower inside this small little engine bay, we have to change the design around. Next we have a license plate frame and the instructions. Following down the line, you have some stickers and random clamps for the hoses, the electrical connections for the heat exchanger pump. Following down, these are the brackets you need to remove the coils off of the valve covers on the LS motor so they move down further since we have these intercoolers there now. You have the coolant pump and the little tank for the heat exchanger. Gates belt, which is pretty awesome that they throw these in. I know on other kits, I always find myself going to buy these after. So a little bit of expense you don't need to spend. You have your idler pulleys and the pulleys we're gonna add to the front end of this engine. Bracket here, miscellaneous hoses, and again, some smaller little clamps and whatnot. So that's everything that you're gonna get when you order this kit. Enough talking and looking at it, let's start putting it on the car. All right, so this car only has 9,000 miles on it, pretty much perfect. We don't want anything bad to happen. We're gonna do things a little bit out of order. We skipped ahead to step 157, and we're gonna pull the front bumper off first, just so we have one less thing that can get damaged, scratched, from a buckle on your jeans or anything like that. So we pulled the wheels off. Now we're gonna go ahead and pull the two inner fender wells, and we can get to some bolts back here to pull that bumper off. Let's go ahead and do it. So there you go. As you can see, we have the inner fender out. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the same to the other side so we can pull this front bumper off. So now we have all the bolts up here taken out so we could gain access to each side to pull the fender wells. We're gonna come back here and do the 5 and pull this whole entire thing right off. Stay your 6 feet apart. Make sure when you go ahead to pull the front bumper off, there's these 4 bolts or screws that come up from the bottom. Those will keep it in place and you will not be able to get it off. Ask me how I know. Earlier in this video for you, it would have been yesterday for us, we went and pulled the front bumper off of this Corvette, and now we're gonna start under the hood. As you can see, we pulled the little hydraulic struts here off of the hood, and there's one per side, one on the driver's side, one on the passenger, and I took a wooden stick here that we cut to length. It goes into the hood hinge down here on the bottom, and up here I just dropped a screw into it so it can't slip out of the hood latch. So So that's perfect. Now we can move it side to side if needed, but it's just real quick and easy to make sure that hood stays up, and we can get some of the air intake pieces out of here to continue on with this blower project. Make sure you have a nice set of fender covers. I went and bought these brand new just for this project. I don't want any scratches or anything underneath, as this car is really nice and new, like we said before. Next, we're gonna go ahead and pull these Corvette covers off. This is the last time they're ever gonna be on this motor, so hope you like how they looked. See you later, sucker. I apologize about the noise of the heater, but it's cold in here, so deal with it. I just pulled these 4 studs that holds this manifold cover on, and then on that ball there, that's where that valve cover that says Corvette clips into. Since this isn't being reused and this manifold is not going to be reused, I don't want to lose these. So I'm just going to thread them back into this manifold finger tight. That way, when we go to give the car back to the customer, we can put that in the trunk in the box, and he'll have all of his parts. They won't have to go searching for these in the future. Just another tip in case somebody ever wants to remove it. All right, so you have a brake booster hose back here. It's right in the driver's side back corner. You need to push a little red clip in towards the front of the car, and while it's pushed in, you can pull that hose out. It's really a pain in the butt, but just take your time, you can get it. I used a long screwdriver, and I put a rag here, and I was prying backward off the cowling here so I didn't scratch all this up, and pop that in to pull that hose out. Now that manifold should come off. I'm just gonna jump to the other side so I don't have this wood in the way. Ready, set, go. All right, so we just went ahead and modified the valve cover. If you look here, the coil packs, the lower bolt used to sit in this hole, and there was a nub that used to stick up here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We cut all those off. You move the coil pack down, and they give you this new bracket here that bolts on, and now your coil moves down, I don't know, whatever that is, 3 inches or so. So that gives you a little bit more clearance for the intercoolers that sit up on each side there. Right now we're ready to go ahead and drop these back onto the motor and continue on with the build. So we'll go ahead and pull the paper towels we had over top of this. So let's go ahead and pull this wiring harness up. We're going to slip it in from the top. It's a little bit easier. And now this wiring harness needs to lay on the bottom side of this boss here. So the wiring here is going to come up the opposite way like this. And this wiring harness here is going to lay way down here. As you can see, we just bought a bunch of room where this used to sit up like this. Now it's going to be way down here. So we have a whole bunch of room in here for the intercooler. Now that we have the valve covers modified, we're going to go ahead and modify this PCV right here. So you remember earlier in the video, we took the PCV out of here when we had the intake manifold still on. It was the 24mm socket. So that threads out of this hole here. They give you this little tool, which is a threaded rod. Kind of, maybe some of them are a bolt or whatever. So there's a little spacer in the end of this that's not threaded currently. We're going to jam this thing in this way. Once it's jammed in, we're going to put this little spacer right here on, and then we're gonna put this nut, and we're gonna tighten up the nut by finger, start heating this up with a heat gun so that it warms up the Loctite that's holding that little spacer in, and we're gonna drive that spacer out using this bolt, or this nut I mean. It's gonna pull against, and it's gonna pull that thing right out of there. So let's go ahead and get this done. All right, so we have our throttle body inlet here, or the adapter I should say. You have an O-ring that goes in this groove all the way around. Just run your finger and make sure that that's seated down. There's 3 bolts and 1 stud that go in here. This stud goes in this lower left corner. So start to thread that stud in. You're gonna put Loctite on both sides. There you go. And now you're gonna put 3 bolts in the remaining holes. This lower one is kind of tricky here. So what I usually do is put the bolt in there first. It'll slip onto the stud you just put in, helping you line up this one, and you don't have to fight with it down underneath the supercharger. So there you go. That stud, make sure that there's at least a couple threads sticking out outward of that nut, but you want to make sure that it's also in far enough that, you know, it's not half a thread into the casting and 10 threads sticking out that you're not using. So usually what I'll do is put it in so that there's roughly 3 or 4 threads sticking out of the nut, and then tighten it down. These 4 bolts are going to get tightened to 106 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, it's inch-pounds. It's a very small torque wrench, usually a 3/8 drive, and it will click very softly. So you have to be paying attention when you go to tighten it. Now we're going to flip it over and do the bottom. So we just went ahead and torqued up the 10 bolts that hold the supercharger down to the engine. The next step is dropping back in our intercoolers. What you're going to do is try and hold it flat. So the next thing we need to do is get the supercharger prep to go on. As you can see, we took the bolts off the perimeter here to take the upper cover off. We had to come out to the front of it, and you take off these 3 bolts, 1, 2, 3, that pulls your coolant in and out for the intercooler brick off of the right side. There's one over here, that's off of the left side. And now we went forward and took out 1, 2, 3 bolts down each side for the intercooler, and we're gonna lift the intercooler bricks out, set them on a piece of cardboard so they don't get damaged, and we're gonna move forward and put the throttle body adapter in place here, and we're about ready to drop it on. So next on the to-do list is pull off the MAF sensor right here. We need to add this extension harness in. So that end's gonna clip into there. This female end is gonna come all the way down this black hose right here, all the way to there. And we have one more plug on this harness, and it's gonna go all the way down here to the bottom right here on this gray clip. So to get started, we're gonna pull this zip tie. So this is your PCV hose now, and that port that we hammered in on the valley there, this hose needs to go from there all the way up around like this and then down into this port. And this is going to make a vacuum which sucks through the hose, and it sucks out, you know, pressure in the crankcase. Next step, now that we have the MAF sensor harness in, this was tucked down nice, I just pulled it up out of the way. we need to go right down here. There's a bolt. We're gonna undo that bolt. It holds the fuse box in. This bracket goes in this direction, facing in toward the driver's seat and forward. We're gonna take that nut off, put the bracket on, put the nut back on here and pull this down. And this is where your intercooler pump is going to go. That's gonna pump fluid from both intercoolers down into the heat exchangers. So let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so we got everything done underneath the car. We got our wiring hooked up for the power steering. We got our ABS module hooked back up, the one wiring harness over here on the frame rail. Now it's time to put in our pulley bracket, and that's gonna go on the driver's side here. On the front of the cylinder head, these two M10 bolts up on the top. Then you have two M8 bolts that go into this bracket on the block, and you have one that goes in sideways here around, just in the back of that web. Moving right along, we got our bracket tightened down now. Now is time for the new tensioner, and that tensioner is going to go 1, 2, 3 bolts. Here, I can do it with my hand out of the way. 1, 2, 3. And you're going to use these M8 by 50s. Make sure, same thing, you throw a little dab of Loctite on these before you drive them home. So now we are going to remove the hood liner. You have two T15 screws right here on the top. You stick your hand under the bottom and you can pull this scoop out, and then you're gonna go through and pull out the little Christmas tree plugs with your Christmas tree puller. So let's get those two T15s out. Now we'll be able to grab the bottom of this and pull. There you go, just drops right out. You can see your clips here. So now what we're gonna do is grab our Christmas tree puller and pull out our Christmas trees all around. And once this insulation is out, we're gonna put this scoop back on and redo our two bolts up so that we don't have any clearance issues. So we have all the hoses hooked up now, and we're ready to put the bumper back on. And then we're gonna go ahead and pull the hood liner as the supercharger hits it. So we'll grab the air compressor. I'm gonna blow out the little filings here from when we cut the holes in the plastic pieces, and then we're gonna throw the bumper back on. And I think, what we're gonna do is just take a picture, and I'll say, there's these 5 bolts here. I'll put a little arrow to them, and that's how we're gonna do the install of this thing. It's getting pretty late, and I'm ready to just get this thing wrapped up. So yeah, I'll bring you back when we go to start the car. When the bumper's all done, we'll drop the car down, put the wheels back on and everything, and I'll bring you back. We'll do the hood liner, and then yeah, I think that's where we're gonna end for tonight. I still have to get the tune to come in from them, and when the tune comes in, obviously we'll have you guys back and do the first initial fire, which for you will be in, I don't know, 5 minutes on this video or 2 minutes or whatever. For us, it'll probably be a day or so. So we'll get the bumper back on and go from there. So we're here now, and we are going to do the flash for the computer to tell the car that it now has a supercharger and different injectors and so on and so on. Okay, so what we did was we went in. You guys can't really see this too well, and I can't get the camera much closer, but what we did was we went up, told it where the file was. We tell it to connect to the car. It tells us that we need 4 credits, which we have. It says to select OK. And now it's going to read, or write the computer, I should say. So that's it. It tells us cycle the key on and off, and then you can close the window, and after that we're ready to go. So we should be fine with this thing. So now let's unplug the laptop and the RTD, brake pedal, and hit the button. There you go, fires right up. call this one a success. If there was no snow outside, we could probably go take it around the block and just make sure, you know, drivability and everything like that is okay. But I don't see that big of an issue right now. Thing fired up, wrote the program fine, so we're gonna call this one a success. So that's it for this video, everybody. And you know, thanks for watching, staying around for as long as it took. That's it. Have a good one, and we'll see you on the next project. See ya. Do stuff.